First of all, absolutely love your passion. It's amazing to have these experiences and dedication. Yes, I do have questions for the audience who haven't astral traveled or had these sort of projections. Do you have some tips or advice for them to, or some steps to have these experiences?
Well, I started from just pretty much ground level. I tried meditation in the past. Doesn't work for me. I just don't have. I kind of don't have the patience for meditation. I like to be somebody that's more hands-on, and I've tried it, and it just didn't have any effect for myself. I'm not saying that it won't work for other people. Just because it doesn't work for me doesn't mean it won't work for you, and vice versa. What I tell people is find something that you're interested in, because if you're not interested in it, you're not going to follow the passion, you're not going to have the drive, and you're not going to put forth the effort required in order for it to be successful. I was adamantly just full force into wanting to do astral projection. That was my whole thing. I'd been successful in it, but every time I was just being sidetracked. And I fought it for a long time. I mean, it's not like you can fight it, but I kept trying and trying and trying. And finally, I just said, okay, I'm going to go in this direction because this is the way I'm being led, and I'm being obviously sidetracked for some reason. So I'm just going to go with it. Sometimes you just got to follow the path that's presented to you and see where it takes you. So I followed this path, and I'm getting a lot of these portal connections, and nobody's giving me any information. Nobody's, speaking to me. I get to see all these places, two-dimensional worlds and that sort of thing. And it's not really giving me any answers. I'm just like, this is great. But after maybe the 50th or 60th one, you're like, okay, well, it's got to have some basis to it. There's got to be some meaning behind it. I'm just not getting it. Maybe I just don't understand. So sometimes I would get more of that language. It's almost like I'm lying in bed and the portal open, and then it looks like an overhead projector, where you can put a piece of paper on it and it puts it up on the wall on a it projects it on the wall, and you can see it, if the teachers used to write on there and teach you. Well, they would put these in that image, and I would see it, and the papers are full of these symbols, and then they would just move them as fast as they could across that screen. And since I'm not photographically, my memory is not photographically based, I can't even figure out what's going on because I don't understand the language. Like, even if it was in English, I would have a hard time trying to comprehend it because I only have a small window of time in order to absorb that. Mm. There's absolutely no sound related to this. It's just visual. But what I realized too is when there are beings on the other side, then there's an energy transfer between myself and the other side. So it's almost like you can't hide anything from those on the other side. And I want to say too that there are different types of portals. There are portals that are for communication only. And these portals are basically just a window, an opening between space-time. So for instance, we think of everything as, okay, I'm here and I need to go here. So I have to travel the space in between point A and point B, my starting point and my destination. That's the way that we look at things. When you've had experience in the astral or outside of there, you realize that space and time don't really have a meaning or a place there. It only has a meaning here. Speed of light, gravity, that sort of thing, they just don't exist, because when you're not in a physical world like we are here, it doesn't mean anything. And even when you're at other places that may look and feel and seem physical, they're nothing but an illusion created by the beings who live there or who reside there. So the portals can be used for communication, and they can also be used for travel. But one thing you have to keep in mind is no matter what they're utilized for, they still have to be connected with some form of energy source in order to open and maintain. And if you're connected with one, they're utilizing your energy source as well. And when you get to a certain point, it will let you know through the connection that it's time to go. It will become pixelated, and it will let you know that it's time to close. And if you don't, it'll still close no matter what. So our energy is going to have something to do with the way the portal opens and the quality of the connection. And so anyways, we'll move on, but there's so many things I want to cover.
I know, and I've got more questions. So
yeah, well, go ahead and do your questions.
A few quick questions. You mentioned there was a third party, or they. Who is they, or the beings on the other side?
The reason why I think I would say it's a third party is, why would somebody, if it was just an energy source or whatever, then I wouldn't get any information. But why would they send images with symbols and writing on there if they weren't trying to convey some sort of information to me? And usually, if it's going to be sent in that type of form, it would need to be a being of some sort, or a person that obviously speaks that language. It doesn't realize I don't understand that language. So it is a third party because, like I said, I couldn't on my own, when I first started, open a portal. I had no concept of it. I didn't even know what they were. After about 20 years of experiencing them, so it's the same thing as if you go to a meditation class and they say, okay, you need to find your way to, the Zen zone, whatever, I'm just saying. So say you find your way to that Zen zone after time, because they help you get into that state. And then you realize, okay, now I know this is the Zen zone. And one thing that I also learned is, if you find a certain state of consciousness that works for you and you want to give it a memory, if you do something like take your 3 fingers like this and hold them together and tell yourself, this is my trigger for this consciousness, this zone of consciousness. And this will help your body get back into that zone. So if you keep repeating it every time, that's kind of like your trigger. And I do utilize that trigger. If you're in like a state of panic or anxiety or something, it doesn't really work that well. But you kind of got to get yourself into that state, and then you do that, and that helps you zero into that. So anyways, I forgot your question. Could you repeat it?
No, it's fine. Two more questions and then we'll move on. Oh my gosh, the lights changed. It's looking purple on me now, which is bizarre. Two simple. Why? If people might ask, what are you hoping to achieve from these experiences?
Okay. That's what I had to ask myself. There was other ways that I was able to access these portals, because at nighttime, when I get them, I have to become lucid within a dream. I have to do all this in order to get that, and I have no control over them. So basically, they're just they work on their own. I realized during my long journey to work and back, many years, that there was something within the daydream state, because I used to daydream a lot. You get bored just sitting in traffic. So at that point, I said, there's something there. I got to figure it out. It took me a couple of years of on and off just trying to figure out what was going on. And I realized that the state of mind that I'm in when I exit, when I'm in that portal state, when I'm laying in bed, I didn't know what state that was. I didn't know what state of consciousness that was. But what I've deducted is that is the closest to a hypnagogic state as any other state that I can name. So the hypnagogic state is what is the state that I'm utilizing when these portals appear, or now that I can induce the portals, now that I know how to do it, but I have to be in that state in order for it to occur. So what I did was, during the daytime, after I discovered there was something within the daydream state, it's actually, here's the daydream, and behind that daydream state is what's really going on. The daydream is a portion of filter that your subconsciousness puts forth to you, just like a dream. So when we're in the astral and we're not consciously having an out-of-body experience, Our subconscious is in our spirit body, and then it sends back information. And then when we wake up, we're like, okay, yeah, last night I was at work in my dream and I did this, or I drove my car. That's just filtered information. You're not seeing what really happened in the astral. The daydream state's the same way, and you have to look at it as you're daydreaming about riding your bike on the mountain. In the background, what's really happening is something different. So I knew there was something in the background that was happening, but I couldn't remember what it was. So what I did was I utilized the same technique that I use for lucid dreaming. I said, okay, all right, I know my subconscious is going there, but it's blocking my consciousness from getting any of that information and bringing it back to my waking self. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to train my consciousness to be triggered and follow my subconsciousness into that state. And it's going to lock into it. And every time there's a change of state, I'm going to be triggered my consciousness. So what I did is I was able to do that. My consciousness went there. I'm like, yeah, there's something happening. Somebody was talking to me. I was sitting at a table. I know that, but I don't remember what it was. Because what happens is when your subconsciousness returns back, there's a veil there. And it's a highly corrosive, resistive veil. So when your consciousness passes right back through there, it's like taking a hard drive of information and putting it through a magnetic field. When you get it back, it's like it's empty. So I'm like, I know what happened. I know a little bit about it, but I can't remember what it was. So what I said is, okay, if I'm going to be successful in this, I'm going to use the shotgun technique, or I'm going to keep doing it from every direction until I can either wear it out or I'm going to wear myself out. So I kept doing it over and over. I said, you know what? If the veil obviously works, but does it work for somebody who's not going to give up? Can I poke a hole in it? Can I wear a hole in it? Can I thin it out? Can I do something to it? Well, I'll figure it out. Well, it took me some time, but I was able to be successful. Brought my consciousness in there, into that state behind the daydream, and I pulled it back and I said, okay, all this information that I thought was going to be groundbreaking and life-changing was mere conversations as I would have in my daily life with people that I knew. So at that point, I'm confused. I'm going, well, what does this mean? What does this mean? Well, after doing it a couple hundred times, I realized what's happening is, so we've got our conscious daily lives here. We also are connected with other selves, alternate realities, all over the place. And I've been doing this part for 15 years, and I've never duplicated a connection with with someone else. So every time I make a connection, it's with a different part of me or somebody else. What's happening is we go, and it's all of us. It's not just me. I was just lucky enough to be able to catch it and follow it. What's happening is we're all connecting subconsciously in the dream state, in the daydream state, and throughout the day. Anytime you have a shift, like you could be in a zone writing a letter or something, and you, for a second, a millisecond, a blink of an eye, that could be 15 minutes or an hour over there because there's no time frame. It's like when I do something over there, it could be a blink of an eye here, and it seems like it was a long time. So you can't reference time to what's going on. So I'm over there, and I am someone else. I am them listening to a conversation or engaged in a conversation or a situation. So when it all comes back to me, when it rushes in, first I have to determine where was I? Try to figure out who was I? What were they talking about? What was the situation? What did everything look like? I mean, all this information, you have to try to figure it out. And it's as if you are there. Now, what I want to say is, you're not hearing. When you're in the astral, or whether you're in an alternate reality or a different dimension, you don't hear. It's telepathic. So when you're communicating, it's in your head. You can hear it as if it was loud enough for it to be in your head. But what I did notice is, and I had to think about a lot of this, you don't have ears. So there's no background noise like a train going by or birds chirping or, a bus or a chainsaw or anything. You don't have that, but you don't realize it because you're so hyper focused on what's going on. You see things as if you were right now, like no different from me talking to you. That's how real it is. There's absolutely no difference between the way it feels and the way you accept it. And when I'm in that state, it took me a long time to be able to do anything but focus on what was occurring at that moment. Because if you don't and keep 150% of your focus on that situation, then you'll lose it and you're back. So it takes a lot of time and effort in order to get to that point. And then once you're at that point and you've been doing it long enough, then you can begin to think while you're there. But it's most of the alternate reality connections are no different than you would experience within your daily life, except sometimes I will see things from above looking down, maybe 25 feet. Like there might be a little girl riding a bicycle down a dirt road, and there's a tree, trees on both sides, and I can see it in the sun setting in the background. And so I'll be in this discussion, and then I'll just be in that view, and I can see it happening. So there's not really much control that I have with the portal connections. I end up where I end up because I don't decide where I'm going. It decides, because once I make the connection, then it's kind of open protocol for that.
Thanks, Mike. So I guess my last question is, do you have a specific technique like step 1, 2, 3, 4 for those that are wanting to have these experiences?
Yeah, I want to make things, try to make them as clear as possible for people. Now I didn't start these, and I've not tried to teach them to anyone because to the best of my ability to explain it, the way that I learned was through repetition over and over. So like I said, if someone were to teach you the Zen and you had to figure your own way out to get to that zone, and you explained it to somebody else and they didn't understand it fully, or they couldn't get to that point, or they didn't put in the time to do that, then they wouldn't understand it. So that's why I try to explain to people about what zone I believe that I'm in, and then how to access it. But like with the portals, I don't imagine a portal. What I do is I get into that zone. And at first, they used to autonomously start. After a while, it stopped. And I thought, well, maybe it's my turn to initiate. And once I began to initiate them, then it was my job to do that. So I had to just figure out how to do it. And that brings us to another point of this. Once you begin to open yourself up for this, then things will start to change, because once you apply yourself, things happen, things work. But what I wanted to say is also through this, there are other dimensions, whether they're two-dimensional worlds or alternate realities. They're above and beyond the astral, above and beyond the mental planes. They're on the outskirts of everything, and they're unlimited. There's probably trillions of each that are occurring simultaneously, and there's absolutely no way to even fathom what's going on. And we, in ourselves, since we're spiritual beings, not physical beings, we're spiritual beings trapped within a physical, a spiritual, a spirit, and a soul. And that's all connected with a subconscious. The subconscious oversees what's happening. The subconscious is connected with this universal bubble that we're in right now. So we have the three-body system, and we have the subconscious overseeing it. And what's happening is that is withholding our consciousness in what I call entrapment, because we are a consciousness. We are a free conscious beings. We have absolutely no mass. We have no need for a body. We have no need for a subconscious. And we have the ability to make these connections consciously, but we are being blocked from it, just like the dream state. Why would anybody, I mean, why would we have dreams, filtered information? Why wouldn't we see what's really happening in the astral at night? Because it's being blocked from us. If people don't know what's going on, then they won't tend to believe it. And it's the same thing with the daydream state. Dreams and daydreams are right there next to each other. The brain activity state is the same, but we've got two states that we work in, and both of them are having information blocked from us. Why can't we know about our alternate states, alternate realities? Why can't we know about these other selves that we have, or these other bodies that we also either control or have close connections to? There's so much that's happening in this universe that we don't have a connection with consciously, and that we don't have access to. So what we need to do is be diligent about understanding what's really happening around us. If that is being blocked, and if that is we're not giving us access to, then you have to ask the question, why? I spent probably 30 years, 35 years documenting what's going on. When I first started, I just thought everything was peaches and cream. I'm in the 80s, metaphysical, I was into that. I went to the guided meditation. We did all this type of stuff. But then I kind of got a little bit off track. And then I read some stuff and I thought, wow, that seems really cool. But then I realized through experience that it wasn't right. I go, that's not true. It has nothing to do with the reality of what's going on. It doesn't work that way. So I kind of stopped reading for a long time. And I said, I'm just going to rely on my experiences. And that's what everybody needs to do. Don't believe me. Don't believe anybody else. Believe yourself, because you're an independent being. You're an independent consciousness. And the only way that you're going to find your own truth is through your own experiences. And when I say experiences, I don't mean, okay, I went there one time, I got it down pat. I know exactly what's happening because, I was there. I went to Vegas for the first time and I won a bunch of money. That means every time I go there, I'm going to win a bunch of money because I'm good at it. Well, that's not the way things work. You got to kind of go in there and you got to dig a little deeper. And I was going there and everybody was, hey, how's it going? We're going to show you what's going on. And they even said, hey, we're going to show you a way to keep those portals open. And I said, hey, no, it's not going to happen because I'm not doing that. That was a red flag for me. Why would somebody tell me, a being tell me telepathically, that they were going to show me how to keep the portals open? Because number one, I know they need an energy source to keep it open. And number two, I also discovered that what I'm seeing on the other side, so say the image that I see on the other side of the portal is 60 feet by 90 feet. I'm just giving you an example. That means that if there's someone on the other side, they can see the same on my side. So they know all about me, but I don't know all about them, because if they're not physical beings, that means that their images can be manipulated by them, and so can their landscapes. And I quickly discovered that because I'm going to places, what I'm saying is other dimensions, and they look very similar to what you would see in a small village, and the beings would look like human type beings because that's exactly what I would probably expect to see. So they figured they'd portray something that made me feel comfortable, which was fine. Personally, I'd rather see things as they really are rather than seeing something that somebody's going to project for me. And so through them offering me to keep the portals open, I realized, okay. And through a couple other instances, I realized every being everywhere has their own agenda. Nothing unlike Earth. Everybody's got their own agenda, and you don't know them. And even if you did know them, you wouldn't know what their thoughts or ideas behind that are. But I do know that they wanted me to follow them. They wanted to kind of teach me. And basically I was there to learn. But what they were telling me was information that I could easily get for myself, or information that I could, learn for myself. They weren't going to give me free energy plans or how to do anything here that's going to make any difference. So their whole idea of helping had to do with controlling the information, controlling the flow of information. And once I didn't buy into it, then I was no longer a popular a tourist visiting their area. I became just another person, and that therefore they left me alone because I wasn't going to buy into the sales. I mean, I wasn't there to buy a shiny new car. I didn't want to buy what they were selling. I wanted to explore for myself. And that's what I had to do. And once I didn't have that interaction, then I began to dig deeper into finding out what was going on, because I'm going there more and more and I'm seeing things as they really are. And I realized that, hey, we're in this situation here on Earth, and they're in this other outer section, but never once did they ever bring up the fact that, hey, you want to come out here and get out of that place or whatever, or they never offered anything of value other than just, like I said, chatter. So I thought, there's something going on that's not jiving, because if I knew somebody was somewhere and they might want to leave, then I would say, hey, we got some alternatives for you. But I think there's some kind of understanding that here we are, we're trapped here. Don't help these people, because that's not in your best interest, because there's things going on. So there's a lot happening under the surface of where we're at. There's a lot of misconceptions and misinformation that we're being fed, even through the spiritual teachings of a lot of corporations and stuff that are giving us information that are meant to redirect our attention away from a path that we would normally take into a path that normally leads to a dead end, or that will branch off for eternity, that you never get anywhere.
Thanks, Mike. I mean, what you're talking about directly relates to your book. Congratulations, A Spiritualist Manifesto. So are we, you say humanity's being manipulated, and we're in some sort of game or matrix. What does this mean?
Well, since we're spiritual beings in a physical body, in order for us to be in the situation we're in, we have to be isolated from our source, and we also have to be dropped down to a lower frequency in order for us to, and then mind wiped, obviously. So we're here in this, we're creators in our own right, and that's what we do. We're basically balls of energy surrounded by a darkness, and I call it like a sticky, light-absorbing darkness that feeds off of what we portray as our energy. We produce energy, they consume energy. It's a predator-prey situation. That's the way it's been for, I don't know, I can't even tell you how long. For many years, when I was a child, I had experiences with these dark beings that I just attributed as nightmares. That's the way things worked. I never had fear going into the astral. I never had fear going into the portals. I never felt anything that really felt threatening. Now, through the daydream state, and which is basically based in the astral, is when about 10 years ago, it started reoccurring with me. And at that point, as the darkness, what I would call the darkness, would begin to envelop my dream state, I would become lucid. And then at that point, I'm pulled out into a portal. And what happened is, every time that began to happen, I became desensitized to what was occurring in that dream state. So after a while, it didn't even bother me. At first, the hair on the back of my neck would stand up, and things would just start to, I could feel myself getting tense. would pull me out. And after a while, it just didn't affect me anymore until a few times, the last couple of times, the darkness would envelop my dream. And it's a darkness that absorbs light. It doesn't reflect anything. So I could feel the being, I could feel them approaching me, but you can't show any fear or any emotional support for it. You just have to just find your center and just move along and allow it to occur around you, but don't let yourself be affected by it. Finally, in the last time, it approached me directly. I faced it. I turned my back on it and I walked away because I knew it wasn't a threat, because there are a lot of threats around us and people feel threatened. And in order for them to get rid of the threat, they'd rather give in than just stand up to it, because the threat of harm or pain is more of a deterrent than the actual threat itself. So I walked away, and then after that, I did start to notice there was some effects after that, because anytime you are approached or around any of these what I call dark ones, and they're within the astral and around, it's almost like breathing in an odor. When you breathe in an odor, the molecules get up into your nasal cavity, which they enter your body, and then your sensors pick it up, and then you smell it. Well, as even with a portal, when there's a connection, there's an interaction between you and what's ever on the other side. It's an energy transference. It's not something you can stop. It's just what happens. Well, there's also an energy transfer between myself and these within these instances. And when you've had a bunch of them, then what's happening is you're affected by them and they're affected by you. Well, when you're affected by them, you actually have parts of them within you, and the same thing. That's how they know you as well, because you are transferring parts of you, and then they're transferring the same. Now, their hope is when they transfer it to you, that you're going to become and think like them. Well, the whole part of it is, the good part about it is, when that happened was I was able to think I was able to think in ways like them that I didn't like, but I was also able to see things from their perspective. So I was able to understand what and how they think about certain things. Now, for me, that was a benefit, and it was a problem. So I dealt with the problem, but the benefit was I was able to understand how not really the way they think, but the way they see us. They see us as cattle or sheep. This is what we would see as a food source. They don't have any feeling or care about how we are or how we feel. Their intention is to get us to produce for their consumption. That's the only purpose behind it. They really don't care how they do it. And their modus operandi is manipulation, illusion, deceit, deception, psychological operations. Basically, is how we are manipulated through our whole entire lives, is through their psychological operations. Everything that we experience in the dream state and everything that we experience in our daily lives work together to keep us within this little box that we all live in. It's our comfort zone. When you live in that comfort zone, then you happen to just stay within there because you feel comfortable and you feel safe there. And if anything threatens that, then most of the time it will get a little smaller rather than expand. And so we've lived in these boxes with these limitations for so long, and we've been programmed through our lives in school and everything else, so that we say, oh no, we've got these rules. We can't do this. We shouldn't do this. This is scary. This is fearful. Don't follow this rule. Don't do this. What we're doing is we're limiting ourselves. We have no limitations, but we're consciously limiting ourselves. The way we think, the way we feel, and our emotions. If we're not in control of everything that we think, everything that we feel, and every emotional output, then we're not in control. It's just like when you go out, when you go into a daydream, you are not consciously in control at that point. You could drive 30 miles and not realize it. When you're sleeping at night, you're not consciously in control. You got 8 hours, 9 hours of that. You're not in control. Who's in control of it? That's what you got to question. Because if you're not in control, somebody else is. And if they're in control, then you need to take it back. And this is for everybody. It's for me, for you, and everybody, because we're all allowing an autonomous system to run around and let things happen because we're too busy on our phone, or we're too busy in a text message or something else. You know, we've got a lot of excuses, but it's time to quit the excuses, because number one, if you just look at the condition or the state of our world right now, the state of our world is a magnification of the astral. The astral is deceitful. It's deceitful here. If this is the prison, the astral is the prison yard. And the reason why I say this is because the beings who create this whole projected system reside there. So they're in charge of your dreams. They're in charge of all this, and they're projecting all what's happening down here. Now, if we had a loving, light, everything, like, okay, just let me give you an example. And this is why I looked at things as a child. I tried all the religions. I tried a lot of things because I wanted to find out what was going on. And then I had to find out the way that I didn't want to find out. That's the way I did not want to. I did not want to find out by exposure. That was not in my intention. I believed for a long time that, yeah, we have, angels are going to come here and they're helping us and this and that sort of thing. But then I began to question. My question is, why do we have 460,000 missing children in the United States every year? And that's just one country. That's one country, and that's every year. Now, I understand there's probably runaways and that sort of thing, but that's almost 500,000 every year. Okay? If that was the only problem that we ever had, then why isn't the spiritual realm addressing that? Why aren't they even addressing it? Why aren't there 50 million psychics out there finding every single kid and putting a stop to this? Why do we have all these wars? Why do we have all this hate? Because we're being programmed. We're being divided. This is worldwide. This isn't just in the United States. It's not just in England. It's not just in France. It's not just in Germany. This is worldwide. And they say, oh, it's an epidemic. Well, yeah. But you have to think about, okay, if we're all being affected by it, if everybody's being affected by it, then it's not just coming from one place. It's not just coming from the government. It's not just coming from this place. It's coming from all over. Everything is pushing the agenda of accept it. We're going to take this a little bit away from you, and you're not going to say anything, because that means you would have to stand up for yourself, and that means you would have to speak out. So if I speak out, then I take the chance of being singled out, and I don't want to do that. I want to stay in my comfort zone. I like this bubble. By staying in that bubble, I draw the line right at my front door, and as long as it doesn't come to my front door, I'm good to go. I'm happy. But if we all think like that, then eventually it's going to be at your front door, and guess what? It's going to be at your neighbor's front door too, so there's nobody going to help you. We all have to work together, and what I tell people is the only way that we can fix our situation, because there's no aliens going to save us, and there's nobody going to save us, because what would be the reason somebody would want to swoop down and save our world from the way it is? Because if they did save it, then in a year it'd be back the way it was again, because nobody's changed. You have to change from within before you can change outside of you. You have to change yourself in order for the change to take effect on everybody. So let me give you an example. If I change myself for the better, then it affects you. And if you change for the better, it affects me. So guess what? If everybody starts changing for the better, it affects us all, because when your frequencies change, it changes the frequency in the general range. It has some effect on it. And the more people who change, the more people who affect the general range. And the more people who become aware of what's really going on are the people that won't buy into allowing what's happening in our world. When they say they're going to take something from you, and it doesn't seem like that big of a deal, then you figure, oh, I'm not really worried about it because, I still got this. Well, yeah, but every little bit is just one little bite. And that's what happens. Change, just take a little bit away every time, and people won't think they're going to be, it's going to affect them. But over time, that little bit gets really big. And then by the time you lost all that, you're never going to get it back because you won't be able to put forth the effort. So I promote getting in charge of your thoughts, getting in charge of your feelings, and getting in charge of your emotions. Because if somebody else,
you just answered my question. Sorry to interrupt. Perfect.
Yeah.
How do we find our freedom? Sorry, please repeat it.
Right. Yeah. So if somebody walks up to you and they say something and it triggers you, what just occurred? What just occurred is they have controlled you. And what's most importantly is you have allowed them to control you. When people can just simply walk up to you and say something, and you just fly off the handle, means they know for a fact they have full control of you and you have allowed it. There is no reason that anybody should allow anybody else to control them. And the reason why you do it is because you're so used to allowing others to do for you. We all want somebody else to fix their problems. We all want somebody else to do what needs to be done. And we're not willing to put forth the effort or the drive. Why? Because we feel that we don't need to. Why did I do it? Did I do it for this purpose? No, I didn't do it for this purpose. I began because I wanted to have astral projection. That's where I started. Then the portal started. Does that have anything to do with this? No. But eventually I got to the point where I said, you know what? I'm older now. There has to be some value in this. Otherwise, I spent all this time in my life doing this. What value does it hold for other people? There has to be something. I mean, it seems like a total waste to just walk away and just throw it in the trash can. So I spent a number of years going through all my documentation and my experiences and sitting and thinking about things like, did I hear anything? Or what did that mean? Why did that happen? What was the purpose behind that? And then once I figured that out, then I had to put it to the test. I had to go back in and test it in order to see if that was the case. Because once you have an idea, then you need to experience the outcome of it. So that's what I did. And then once I started doing that, and once I started writing, then the information started to flow. Because when you absorb information or absorb things, experiences from other places, it kind of builds upon you. But I do know when people are looking for an easy way out, it's never that way, because we live in a complex system. It's not complicated, it's complex. But until you have an understanding of it, it seems impossible. I was in the thought form, or the thought that there are things that are impossible for us. And this was up until not just recently. I thought, yes, there are certain things we can do, but other things are impossible. Now, I don't believe in that. I believe that there is nothing that is impossible. Because if you set your mind to it and you push forward beyond what you think your limits are, because in order to achieve the impossible, you have to endure the impossible. So when people say, I can't do it, I'm in a wheelchair, or, I do this, or I can't do it anymore, that's no excuse, because we all have the capacity. You just have to want it bad enough. You have to push yourself forward. There's no reason that we can't do what we choose to do. And there's no reason we can't make this world a better place, because people say, well, I want to get out of the recycling process that we're stuck in. So when I die, I'm just going to tell them, no, I don't want to be reborn and that sort of thing. Well, if it was that easy, then we would have been out of here a long time ago. My thinking and my belief in this part of that system is it's not that easy. And when people say things like, well, why would our creator allow this situation? And you know, if we're really stuck in this situation, why would a loving creator allow this? And my response is, okay, you are a creator, okay? You have the abilities. If you want out of a situation, then you have the ability to do it, but it's not going to be easy. You have the tools. I try to give people tools and information. Even if anything that I say or everything that I say, only one word means anything or triggers a spark in you or helps you along a path, that's all that matters. Because that's all anybody could ever do. Because it has to be you that does it. Don't depend on me. Don't depend on anybody else. Depend on yourself. But utilize the tools that work for you. Utilize the information that can help you along your path. But nobody can do it for you. Nobody can get you out of that pit, and nobody can learn for you. And I can tell you the same thing for 100 years, and you would not understand it until you experienced it for yourself, and then you would know. There's a difference. What you haven't seen, you can't understand, and what you have seen, you can't unsee. You can't unlearn. So it's really, when they say spirituality, I call spirituality freedom, but freedom and truth are based upon experience. You have to experience things in order for you to actually understand, for you to actually comprehend what's going on. And the only way that you're going to do it is to commit yourself and allow the time and effort to achieve it.
Wow, Mike, what a lot of jam-packed information in this interview. Thank you so much. On a final note, I'm sorry, before I interrupted you, you were giving some tips to find our freedom. I think it started with be aware of your thoughts or control your thoughts. I'd love you to share that on a final note with the Passion Harvest audience.
When I looked at freedom, I said, we have to first understand what really freedom is. Okay. Now, freedom, you could easily say, is freedom is the ability to do as you please, as long as it doesn't infringe on the rights of others, which is pretty basic. We can all live by those rules. Well, freedom and spirituality are interchangeable. You know, I mean, when people say, well, it's a spiritual path and this sort of thing, well, basically you're looking for individual freedom, because we all are individual consciousnesses. But even though we're individuals, we can still work together because we have the same goal of being free, of being allowed to live within our normal atmosphere, our normal way of life, our normal choices, not bound by anything. So the only way we're going to get where we want to go is through working together. And like I said, I can't do anything without affecting you, and you can't do anything without affecting me. So when I help you, I help me, and I help everybody else. And when you help somebody else, you help everybody else. We can't not help each other, or we can't not almost harm each other if we continue on down this path. But everybody who helps themselves will eventually help everybody else, and it works down the line. So as we move along, the only thing that we can really do to affect anything is to, number one, stand up for yourself, make changes to yourself so your thoughts, your emotions, and your feelings are under your control. Because every time that you fly off the handle or get emotional and do these things, you're just feeding the system. We don't want to feed the system. We want to control the system. And any computer expert will tell you, the best place to be to hack a system is from within. And guess where we're at? We're right in the middle of the system. So if we want to make changes to the system to our advantage, let's do it, because this is the way we make the change.
Wonderful advice. And finally, and I will leave a link below in the description, where can people connect with you, Mike?
I have a YouTube page called My Dark Explorations. I also have a Rumble page under the same name. And then I have 3 Kindle books, My Dark Explorations, The Spiritualist Manifesto, A Guide to Freedom, and Leaving the Illusion of Life.
Mike, thank you so much for being on Passion Harvest. Wow, I had to re-listen to this because there was such a huge amount of information, but thank you very, very much.